Hi, this is Dr. Pete Butkins. It's February 15th, 2013 already, and I'm delivering a video on marijuana, the uses, abuses of marijuana. I want to start with the concept that marijuana is probably very helpful to a lot of people. If you can smoke marijuana, like take a couple hits a day, smoke it once a week, put it down, smoke it once a month on occasions. If you're not seeking it out, you don't have it in the house and you don't depend on it, and you can smoke a little bit at a time and put it down and stop, then it's probably like a beer on the weekend, a beer or two on the weekend. If you're doing more than that, and if you want more, that's a problem. A problem is defined as that which leads to problems. If you're using a drug, a substance that leads to problems, that is a problem. And that's what you got to look at, is the concept that some people experiment. That's one or two times. If you like it, you go on to maybe using it socially. Social is you take it or leave it. If you go to a bar, you have a beer or two. You don't have three or four. You don't have five. You don't have 10. And you certainly don't drink when you go home. You don't drink before the bar because you want to look bad. You drink socially. You take it or leave it. If it's at the wedding, you drink it. If not, you don't. And it doesn't bother you. You don't think twice about it. If you only go to restaurants where there's alcohol, you might want to think about it. The issue for me is that you have to self-diagnose. No one can really tell you whether it's a problem. You've got to come to terms with it yourself. I smoked pot from 1969 to 1986 daily. I also drank a lot with it, so it was hard to understand whether the pot was doing the damage or the beer or the combination or what. But the pot was not a gateway drug for me. I stuck with pot and Bud Light for a long time. I started drinking beer in high school, and I quit that in 1986 through a higher power. I didn't really quit. I couldn't quit. I gave up at 39. At 41, I ran into somebody that had been going to 12-step meetings, and I haven't had a drink since. And that's not because I'm a real smart person. That's because it was a gift. Most people die from this addiction disease without even knowing they have it. 96% of us don't get out of denial, so I would figure I'm one of the lucky ones. So I've been there personally. I also been studying it for 47 years, so I understand the academic side of it. I also been treating people for over 45 years with drug and alcohol problems. And denial is when you treat someone and you go out and get drunk that night. And I'm not ashamed of that, but I'm not proud of it either. It's kind of a neutral thing where I don't regret it because it's very helpful to share with someone I'm working with. And on the other hand, I don't want to go back and do that again because it almost killed me. Pot pretty much destroyed my immune system. I had a doctor tell me that. I have Barrett's esophagus, which means the end of my esophagus is gone. I think pot contributed to that. I get bronchitis probably every 6 months. Pneumonia I get once a year. It took a long time to clear up from that. It was very, very hard to understand whether it was the pot, because I was smoking cigarettes too. And then I found out that the tar in pot really, uh, you know, not without getting into all the chemistry of it, there's 3 times more tar in pot than there is in a cigarette, a single cigarette. So a joint of pot has about 3 times more potency and potential for causing cancer than does cigarettes. I looked this up when I got sober because the drug is touted as innocuous, and it really is to a degree if you're not an addict. So if you're experimenting, you go on to social use, you stop there, you're probably okay. And you can build a case for all these people that want to legalize it. It might be good for them. I'm not one of these clinicians that says you can't, nobody can ever do anything. It's really a matter of the next two categories of use. There's experimental first, second there's social, third there's abusive use, and then there's addiction. Abusive use means that you're grieving, you're using it for psychological reasons maybe, you're going through a loss, you're going through a divorce, and you are using it for relief, and you're getting relief. You're getting away from the problem. You're able to compartmentalize it, not think about it, not worry, not live in the fear of divorce or the hurt or the anger, especially if there's been abandonment issues. A lot of people will find relief. But if you find out that it's causing problems and you don't stop, that's addiction. If you find out it's causing problems, such as you're short of breath, you find yourself not being able to walk up the same set of stairs the same, you can't run, you're finding you're getting fatigued easily, or your immune system is impaired, then it's a concern. And I know the argument. The argument is that it's good for glaucoma, it's good for cancer patients, it's good for cataracts, etc., etc. The problem is, and this has just been published by Hanley and I believe my other source is Harvard Medical School. They do a lot of research on drugs, and they're coming out and saying it actually exacerbates some medical problems that it's used for. So it lowers the resistance to the drug. It does not allow the body to normally prevent bacteria and other contaminants from creating problems, more problems in fact from that the person had before. A lot of people with HIV will use pot, and this really destroys the immune. Well, I'm not going to say destroy. I don't want to exaggerate this, but it impairs the immune system to the point that the pneumonia that comes eventually is the death sentence for people with HIV. So it's very difficult to get, relief from HIV through pot, because it can do the damage that you're trying to prevent. So the irony is that there are other drugs that are much healthier for people that have certain diseases that we think pot should be prescribed for. The other issue is, people that use it normally or are abusing it and really aren't experiencing tremendous problems, maybe in the early stages of abusing it, where they might get a hangover from it once in a while, or they might drive while they're using it, or they might lose concentration, the memory goes, the alertness goes. I mean, there's a reason Spicoli was in, Sean Penn played Spicoli in that movie, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, way back when. There's a reason he acted like he was in a stupor, because that's the way people that use pot sometimes end up. That's usually addiction. That's usually when someone needs higher amounts in order to function properly. And I'm not sure it's a gateway drug for everybody. A lot of people, end up on heroin that started with beer. So you really can't build a case. That's the argument against that pot, is a gateway drug. I don't care if it's just pot that you stay on. It's going to do a lot of damage. Hanley, AMA, there's Betty Ford, they've all done a lot of research on this. The ASAM is talking now about the definition of addiction as being chiefly defined by, in my opinion, motivation. So the reason you're using the drug, if you're using the drug for relief from a divorce and you're not getting relief and you go on to use it, your motivation is maybe to get high, maybe the euphoria it produces. The same thing with opiates. If you're using opiates at 3 o'clock in the morning because your back is so, you're in so much pain because of your back, you're L5 or 6, or your neck, or you're having a lot of difficulty with any problem caused by an accident, then you're using the opiates to, the Dilaudid, the OxyContin to quell the pain, then that is not addiction. That could be dependence. If you're using it for euphoria, that's addiction. It's real simple. But it is a matter of being honest. A lot of people don't get sober because the denial prevents us from really seeing things clearly. The 12-step programs call it self-deception. It doesn't say we're lying, but really we're being dishonest with ourselves because we can't see it clearly. And you're smoking up pot, and your thinking and your memory are going to be impaired. Ask me how I know. But the bottom line is the THC, tetrahydrocannabinol will, it will interfere with receptor sites in the brain. It will actually lodge in the receptor sites so that the thinking is impaired, and the brain will not, receptor sites won't connect, so messages won't get sent properly. And by the way, these are documented facts you can find in the literature. Most literature will not promise or guarantee that the information that you get from them is accurate. They'll say this strongly suggests this. There is a significant difference between this group that smoked pot and scored lower on these tests with the same IQ as this other group that didn't smoke pot and scored higher on the test. They will say there's a significant difference between the two, and this suggests, or this implies, that the pot impaired the brain activity and really prevented the person from scoring at a higher level than the same people from the same population, a similar sample. But if you go around talking about giving your opinion on pot because you smoke it, you're really doing a research study with one person. And a good research study should have 30, 40 people in the group in the sampling. Sometimes, depending on the design of the research, you need a lot of people. But to do a research, and they call them N for number. N equals 30 means you've got 30 people in your control group or your experimental group, or, you know, that's how you define how the people is by an N. And if you're doing a research study with an N of 1, you're really giving your opinion, which is very biased, and you're not really, you know, looking at what works and what doesn't work and what is really valid and reliable and true. You're looking at your own opinion based on the concept that you probably want to keep smoking pot. And you know, I know when I was smoking pot, I was very anti-authority. I was very defiant. I had a case built where it grows in the ground. God gave it to us. It's an herb. George Bush jumped out of an airplane in World War II. The parachute made out of hemp. It's innocuous. It's not like heroin. It's not even a drug. It's an herb. Blah 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 blah. Until finally, you know, I got pneumonia and bronchitis so often, and my immune system was so impaired that I didn't get over those things quickly. And then my esophagus started to go. And a lot of it is, a lot of my information is, you know, I try to be cautious. I try to err on the side of caution because I did drink beer and I did smoke cigarettes, so it's hard to really tell what did what. And I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, we know exactly what did what, but I've watched enough films by experts and pioneers in the field of addiction to be convinced that putting a substance in my body that causes cancer at such a high rate and does lung damage and enlarges the heart and you know, interferes with the gastrointestinal system to the degree it does and causes, you know, impaired brain functioning is really brain damage. And that's reality. The brain damage, it's not like getting hit in the head with a shovel unless you do it for decades and decades, but eventually it will be. I'm a firm believer of that. So it all depends on whether you're using it socially, and I think there are social users. I haven't met a lot. I mean, I met maybe a couple people, but I mean, it was hard to tell whether they were using socially or not because I never knew them that well. I do know people that abuse it, have minor problems, a lot of minor problems, but they put it down because of that. It's not working. If you're doing something to get over a divorce or a death and it's working, you keep doing it. But if you get to the point where there's a problem with it, abusers and social users will not do it. They just won't do it. They won't argue whether it's good for you or bad for you. They'll just stop because they're interested in their health. I had to do it. I have genetic predisposition to addiction. Once I put products in my body, I get cravings. I want to do more. I very seldom gave up a beer or pot in my teens. In my 20s I could, in my teens I could, in my 30s I couldn't. I did it every day. I didn't do it till nighttime, and that was my excuse. I don't do it till the night. I don't do it in the morning. I can quit anytime I want because I could in my 20s. So my mind, my addictive mind said, you're good to go. You can quit anytime you want. You just don't want to. And so I would listen to that mind and stay high. It wasn't until I got in with people that understood addiction till I could really learn how not to get high and how not to get drunk. So the idea is that it does produce problems if you use it duration and frequency that is even regular. Um, Regular use is one joint a day, by the way. That is regular use of it. If you're using, you can binge on it, just like people do on alcohol. You can use it once a week, once a month, but most bingers make up for it. So it's a matter of you know being real clear about what you're doing. A lot of times, other people that you know will give you good information on it, whereas it's very difficult for you to get good information on it. So you've got to look at the idea that good information is, often comes from other people that are clear-headed and not using a drug. I'd have a lot of people look at me and just, wonder why I was doing what I was doing. But I had such overconfidence and arrogance, and would just dismiss them. So anyway, what is too much? Too much, excessive, is that which causes problems. Father Martin used to say that. Father Joe Martin, who died last year, was a great pioneer in the field of addiction. I believe his films were denial breakers, and if I can do 1/3 of the job he did, I'll be happy. But he would make statements like that, like, once you realize that pot is, or that alcohol and other drugs are not medicines that you take for problems, but we have medicines that work much better than those drugs and don't cause the side effects that those drugs cause. And there's natural homeopathic cures and alternatives that we could look into also. And he says that takes away that excuse. So you can't use that excuse anymore. So at any rate, we don't have any excuses to use excessively. And excessive is that which causes a problem. If you can do it normally, which is once in a while, socially, then it's probably a good thing that you do it. It's probably helpful. And by socially, I mean 1 or 2 beers, and I'm not talking about every night. Every day is regular use. Or a joint, maybe, I don't know, once a month, once every 5, 6 months, something like that. Then you got to make sure you're not using prescription drugs along with this. So addiction is all about getting abstinent, or using something where there is a problem and the solution is abstinence, and working a program where you can learn the tools so you can remain abstinent. Because we don't want to see you die from this disease. Like I said before, 96% of addicts think that an addict is someone laying in the alley or shooting up or with a needle in their arm, or someone that can't function, that's begging money on the street corner. It's an equal opportunity disease. There's people in Congress, there's people in major corporations, business on Wall Street, there's people in the ghetto, there's people in the rural areas that are addicts, there's lawyers, doctors, Indian chiefs, therapists. Oh, it's an equal opportunity problem. And 96% of us don't get out of denial. 2 have a chance to get sober, but go right back to drinking or drugging or both. 1 relapses from 2 weeks to 2 years. The last one stays and then he stays sober, by the way. The last one stays sober and clean from then on when they break denial. But I found there is a design for living in the 12-step programs that works beautifully. And come join us. Thanks a lot for listening to this. I know it's a lot to absorb, but these are my thoughts and opinions. By the way, backed up by data and backed up by the research. It's not just my opinions on the problem with marijuana, legalizing marijuana and using marijuana. And again, you have to self-diagnose. Think about it. Write down the pros or cons. Self-diagnose. Talk to someone. Try a 12-step meeting. You don't want to die from this disease. You really don't. It's an awful way to die because you lose everything. Everyone around you is affected. The kids. And my motto is just say something. Let's stop this in this generation. Thanks for listening. Pete Butkins, My Freedom Quest, 407-786-1913. God bless.